Good evening, everyone. Today, we invite Mr. Lei introduce some interesting story about Chinatown. You know, Chinatown in the early age in Vancouver, it's just like a small village in Guangdong province. The people in the Chinatown either come from Zhongshan, Taishan, 同埋西邑 from these three county. So now the Chinatown, the language changed a lot. Probably you will feel a big interesting things when the language change. Hello.
Hey,
Mr.
good
Lei.
evening, Joe.
Yeah. Would you please introduce some interesting story about the change about the Chinatown?
Okay, yeah. This is probably one of my most enjoyable topics is talking about old Chinatown in Vancouver. Now, Chinatown in Vancouver downtown was mostly comprised of people from Guangdong province. Specifically, the people came from either Taishan or Zhongshan or Siyap. So they speak Cantonese but with a heavy accent. So much so that sometimes we don't understand each other, so we speak English. However, saying that, some older Chinese came over, they never adopted the new language, or what we say English. They went through their whole lifetime here without learning a word of English. These people, of course, they didn't know any better. They had no education before they came. They had no education here. They're laborers. For example, we had a gardener who came to mow our grass, and he only spoke Siyap, Wa, and but we understood the situation he was in. He came over as a young man. He came over during the time when the Canadian passed a law that said there shall be no immigration of Chinese to Canada. The law states that to get into Canada, you had to pay what you call a head tax, which was at those days 500 Canadian dollars. So you can just imagine $500 Canadian around 1910, 1915, however, 1905 even, was maybe about $2 million now. So you understand, nobody got here. So the Chinatown was actually like a little island. There's all these people who came here before the head tax law was introduced, and nobody else came during the head tax, which lasted 25 years. So it was the same old people. There's no new immigrants from China or Taiwan or anywhere where the Chinese wanted to come from. So everybody got to know each other. It's a small community. It was like a little village. Our Chinatown was, being that way, was preserved. What I mean is that no one bothered to build. We kept the same old buildings. All the merchants were the same merchants. They wouldn't leave their location because our Chinatown was like an island. It didn't help either when the Chinese people could not vote. They could not go to university they could not get any government benefits. So it was the island in that respect that nobody helped us, so we have to help ourselves. So everybody helped themselves and helped their community, helped their brothers and sisters. Everybody was friendly towards each other. Unless you went into one of our gambling dens and lost your money, and then start borrowing money, and then soon everybody knows you're the gambler because our Chinatown was that small. And there was a lot of gamblers because with the head tax, the Chinese men could not bring their wives and family over. They could not get a girlfriend sent over from China to marry with. So they suffered. And so they remained single through their whole lives. So you can imagine why they gambled. Gambling brings you kind of a social thing. Plus, when you have kind of a mindset where there's no hope because you couldn't start a family, you sort of start squandering your hard-earned money away. Like our gardener did. We didn't pay him much, but whatever it paid him, he spent it all. So many a night, he came up to our place and just slept in our garage or in our basement. He had no place to go and couldn't pay the rent. Okay, let's go back to Chinatown. It was just so friendly. Everybody knew each other by first name. You go into any restaurant in our Chinatown, always out of maybe 25 tables, you would know 20 tables. You know everybody in that table. Imagine that, walking into a restaurant, you know like everybody or 3/4 of the diners. It took a long time to get to your own table because you had to say hello to everybody. Say hi to everybody. How's your daughter? How's your son? It was that kind of feeling, small community feeling. Everybody wanted to know what's going on in your family, your kids, your wife, how you doing. Yeah. No one really talked about their jobs. It's all social. Talk about the people in your lives. Which is different from now. Everybody's always talking about business now. How to get ahead, how to buy a condo, how to buy a car. It's like all business now. Yeah. But let's keep on going. In our Chinatown, it was only 4 blocks long. It's like not very big. But everybody went there, and it was Asian ghetto. It's like the back alleys are a little bit dirty. A lot of places were open 24 hours, and we get a lot of black people and prostitutes hang out in Chinatown because they weren't accepted anywhere else in town. Anybody that weren't accepted anywhere else in Vancouver came down to Chinatown and hang out. We had a lot of clubs there, great clubs. Clubs that are open to late hours, a lot of gambling dens, a lot of neon lights. And it was also a safe place for kids. It was like there was no bars in the windows, and not like you find in Hong Kong or big American cities. You don't see any bars in the window. No one came and tried to rob anybody. There's two things saying that peaceful and nobody would get robbed. There's two things happened in our Chinatown that were quite something. We had the clans, where we had the family of these clans would gather together. They would, you could learn Chinese, how to read and write Chinese, or you go there learn Kung Fu, or you can just generally, it's something to do with being together, you know. Later there was some Chinese gangs formed in Chinatown, and the police force at that time, which is not now, in that time they're all white people. There's no police in Chinatown actually. They might send one policeman down just to walk the street so you can have some free food in one of our great restaurants. But Chinatown policed itself with the societies or the clans or the gangs. They protected the Chinatown. Now what's really interesting is that the Mandarin language, or Guoyuwa or Guoyu, never came into our Chinatown until about 1983, because people like myself, third generation Chinese, or it could be second generation Chinese, all we did was grow up on English and Cantonese. Never heard Mandarin. We didn't even know what Mandarin even sounded like. We didn't even have a Mandarin radio station or Mandarin TV station like we do have now. I first found out about Mandarin was when my wife, who I brought over from Taiwan, she complained that she couldn't speak Mandarin to anybody until she joined the Kuomintang Cultural Center, or the Guangmingdong Society, which she met other people from Taiwan. At that point, there was nobody from mainland China because, as we all know, mainland China didn't let anybody out, nor did they have any diplomatic relationships with anybody where people could get visas to come out of China. So China was out of the picture. The Mandarin people, the Mandarin speaking people, were either from Taiwan or from Singapore. My wife had to go out to get meat at this store where this gentleman, this Chinese guy spoke Mandarin with her. And she was so happy she found somebody that she could speak Mandarin with on a daily level. So she bought a lot of meat from this guy. And they were happy and she was happy. So that was good. Now in Greater Vancouver, I would say Mandarin and Cantonese is 50-50 as far as the language is concerned. Half the time you hear people speak Cantonese, and half the time you hear people speak Mandarin. So it's quite different now. A lot of people from mainland China have come here. They love it here because people like myself and my father and my grandfather re-established. We laid down the foot. We were the foot soldiers for making this a great Chinese community. This is Vancouver is almost like a city out of China, just dropped in Canada. You could actually survive a whole day here just speaking Mandarin or Cantonese and be happy with that, because nobody else would speak anything other than that to you. So they weren't as frustrated as my gardener, put it that way. They can get girlfriends, they can get wives, they can have mates sent in from China and get married. Everything's happy. Yeah. No head tax. You can vote now. You can join the military. You can go to university. Yeah, none of those things were a given when I was growing up.
Saying that, Frank, do you have anything to ask me? I just wondering, what's your son's accent? They speak Mandarin or Cantonese or English?
Well, you know what?
Both son, your both son.
That's my older son, this is very unique. My older son, when he spoke only a little bit of Mandarin, because my wife's from Taiwan, and a whole lot of English until he was 4 years old. And at age 4, my son and his mother went to Taiwan for 1 year because he didn't have to go to our elementary school until he's 6 years old. So he spent 1 year in preschool in Taipei, in Taiwan. And when he came back, he could not speak a word of English. He could only speak Mandarin. In fact, when he came back, he was crying. He wanted to go back to Taiwan because he couldn't speak English to anybody here. But now, 32 years later, he can hardly speak Mandarin. It's probably still inside him. If he probably went back to China or Taiwan for maybe 5-6 months, he'd probably start speaking fluently now. But because his mate is non-Chinese, where he speaks English, he has to speak English all the time for business and at home. He's gradually losing it. Probably can speak Mandarin better than me. But I can speak better Cantonese than him because he didn't bother to learn Cantonese.
Okay, thank you. 本节目是由美国加州奥克兰市英记世家赞助播出。我们不办高声，我们直播传真。这里是海外华人直播，各位观众再见。